Hey, what's going on? So I see that I'm gonna be explaining this a few times. So I made this video and I want to explain the prophetic message that the Lord gave me that now I have understanding of, and it flooded in yesterday. So the day before yesterday, 2 days ago, I fasted and I was seeking clarity and I was seeking instruction on what to do next with my life. For those that don't know, I've had very major changes go on within my life. And so now I'm asking, what do I do next? Because now I don't want to make a false move. I don't want to mess up. So I was given answers to questions that I didn't necessarily ask about, I feel, in this moment, but hear me out. So what happened? I was doing an interview on Saturday. I did a pre-recorded interview on Saturday and released it on Tuesday. The manager of my series, my podcast, broke down the videos into 40 shorts. And in one of the shorts, I was talking about, and I did this in the interview. One of the shorts, I was talking about how the news, actually in two of them, where how the news took a perception. Basically, they talk about homicide, they talk about murder, they talk about these things, especially in the black community. And then they always show a picture of a young black person, a young black man, and then they just go on about their day. So it's always homicide on this, avenue, on this boulevard, on this street. And then they show these young black men and then they move on. And so the belief has become and been held on to that the number one cause of death for Black Americans, especially Black American men, is homicide. But this is what I was talking about in the interview. I said that you would believe that, but actually the number one cause of death for Black men in America is actually self-unaliving. That's what I said. But it was not. He said for Black males, it actually was self-unaliving. That was number one. I was like, what? Because like every time you look at the news, it's always such and such was shot on this boulevard, and then they show the face of some 20-year-old black guy, and then we already know what happens after that. So that's the narrative in your head, like, man, they really out here doing stuff to each other. But the truth is, like, homicide is no longer even in the top three, and it hasn't been for almost 10 years.
Wow.
All right, they're
So
trying to push the narrative.
they trying to push something. That's how I feel. They trying to tell us something that we ain't supposed to be knowing, but or something that just ain't true. But I feel you on that one. And so, which the person I was interviewing didn't know that. I didn't know that until that morning, and actually it didn't register to me till that morning. I've actually heard this about 2 or 3 times. I would really say 3 times before, but this was the time where I heard it, and I was like, that actually makes sense. So I didn't think about it when I said it in the interview. It was after I fasted where I really registered what was just said. So what happened after that was I had I went online. I was getting ready to post a video, and it just hit me. Me and my mother, we were having a discussion, and I was telling her, it just came out. I said, Mom, the Lord actually told me this was coming. I said, you remember about the dream I told you in 2022, April 16th? And I said, when we were coming out of church, and I said, and I felt a glory from the Lord. I said, it was like he smiled over me or something. I said, it took over my body. And I said, and I was able to actually see farther. I said, I remember the Lord. I said, not necessarily seeing him, but seeing the Spirit of the Lord. I said, with his hand raised like this, his right hand, it was raised like he was ready to give a command. And I remember that. And I said, after that day, I had so many dreams because I remember being on the SONY team and doing some of my first fasts. I said, as a collective, as a rap collective, we would fast together. So I would fast, and there were dreams that would flood in, messages, visions, they would flood in, and many of them would happen. There were many times where they were confirmed as real, not just a dream or not just something that was a figment of my imagination. They would confirm themselves to be very, very real. So there was one that I did not get the understanding for, and I don't even want to say I misunderstood it, because these things are to happen and there are scriptures to back them up. But I didn't understand the fullness of it until now. So in the dream, there were young men. There were young men that were in old army uniforms, old BDUs, like 90s uniforms, not necessarily World War I or II, but they were in like 90s army attire. And they were all younger than me. All these men were younger than me. None of them were millennials. They were all Gen Z men. And they were running into a battlefield. Now, let me describe this battlefield to you. It was very big. It was very wide. And it was dark outside. So it was nighttime. So the grass was dark green, but had that very much black hue over it. And the men were running into the battlefield and being shot down. I mean, shot in the head, shot in the chest, shot down. It was every last one of them. They were all running out with weapons. They were running out with old guns that the military no longer uses in combat. M16s are not used in the military combat anymore. And they were running out there with them, and they were not using them properly. They were flailing above the head, going, ah, and then, ah, and they're running out there and dying. They were just getting slaughtered. And the thing is, nobody was actually shooting at them. They were running to a tree line, a dark tree line. And as they would run, bullets would fly out from over there. They were just flying. And you couldn't see who was shooting. There was no person over there actually shooting. They were running to a dark tree line and just being shot. They wouldn't even make it to the tree line before they would be shot. This field that they were in had to be about the size of maybe a football and a half, long, a football field and a half long, and it was being covered in blood. The men were being picked up by these old looking, I want to say World War One. The terms World War One keep popping in my head, but they look like World War One ambulances. And the medics kept trying to come out there and pick up the bodies and pick up the wounded. And there were so many young men dying and being shot and wounded, till when wounded men were collected by the medics, they would eventually die, because what was happening is there were so many dead men that 7 of them would be stuffed into the back of these ambulances at a time. They would be stuffed in, and the wounded would die because they were among the dead. It was so much dying going on. It was horrific to see. And the scene ended up turning red. These young men were going out there and dying and not even having a chance. Like, they wouldn't duck. They had no guidance. They had no formation. They had no understanding. They literally did not know how to fight in this battle. And they were just running out there and charging and being slaughtered. And so the ambulances weren't even being touched. That's the thing. The ambulances were clean, but they were very old. No rust or anything, but they were very old style, like literally World War One old. I don't know why I keep saying World War One, but the medics themselves were never being shot. They were helping, but they weren't being. They were out there, but they weren't being shot. So now you got. That was the first dream, and by the end of the dream, the field was covered in blood that would not dry up. It was blood it would remain red. It covered it was so much blood, it covered the dark hue that came from the night sky. It was just so much. And it was horrible. This dream ended. Then months later, I had another dream, and for those that understand what I'm saying, if you understand what I'm saying, this dream was connected to the first one, even though they were months apart. And I'll tell you how I know it. You'll hear it when I talk about it. In the second dream, it was about Generation Z women. There were no millennial women in this. It was Generation Z women and millennial men. They were the only ones I saw in this. So the Generation Z women were running around holding babies. They were holding their children, and they were running around looking for men. They were asking men to marry them. They were telling men, please. They were telling the millennial men, please marry me. Please marry me. If you don't marry me, I won't survive. I won't be protected. No one will care. Help me. And a lot of the men were turning them down. The men were telling them, I'm not raising you in those babies. I'm not raising you in that baby. And what it was, like, it came to me. Those women were actually the mothers to the children that were the children of the men that had died in the first dream. They were all of the children were born out of wedlock. Every last one of them were born out of wedlock, and the women were running around trying to find a man that would marry them. They were even offering themselves in ways that they probably normally wouldn't do. I could hear so many different voices. I could hear so many different arguments, so many different disagreements, and so many different denials. And the women were running to the men, and they were telling the men, marry me. I don't care what I have to do. And some of the women even said, I'll be your seventh wife. I'll be your seventh wife. I don't care. I don't care if I'm the seventh one. And so the men were listening, and some of the men would choose as many women as they could. Some of the men chose none of them. A lot of them chose none of those women. And what they were saying was, I can't help you. I can't afford you. I don't want that baby. I don't want to raise another man's baby. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Why didn't you want me when I wanted you? What's going on now? No, I don't need that. But one of the statements stuck out to me. One statement said, I don't want to raise that child because I don't know anything about his father. If you know anything about the connection between young boys and their fathers, you kind of understand how severe this is. The millennial men were telling the women, I don't want what their father has to come into my household. And so they would deny the women. And some of the men even told the women, I'll take you, but you have to leave the baby. And a few of the women chose to leave the child just so they can be wives. There was women running around saying, God, please give me a husband. I don't want to live with my reproach. I don't want to live with my reproach. I don't want to live like this anymore. And scripture talks about this. Scripture talks about women who will want men and will be fine with basically being their wives up until the seventh wife. All of this, it's in there. So that was the second dream. Those women were like, I had one run up to me and she said, she was like, will you marry me? And I said, no. And she was like, why won't you marry me? And I told her, I said, I can't afford you, remember? Like, it just came out. I wasn't even really thinking about it. I was like, I can't afford you, remember? And she broke down. She started crying. She started begging. She said, please, I need a protector. I need a protector. I need somebody who can help me. And they were frantic. It was so many women. These were all for lack of a better term, these were all the baby mothers of the men that had died in the first dream. And it was pitiful. It was very sad. And that was the second dream. I didn't understand that one fully when it first happened. But what I did feel like was that a big war was coming. I have had other war dreams where I would see red stars on helicopters flying over places like Chicago, Charlotte, New York. I've had other dreams, soldiers marching in the streets of America. There was I had another dream of rallying going on in heaven, and the soldiers of heaven being lined up in different colors, and each color stood for a different function of that regiment or of that battalion. And it was like a pep rally in heaven. The mothers of mankind who had already passed away were in heaven pleading for the lives of their descendants. I've had all these dreams. So when I saw this one, I honestly thought they were all lined up. They were all together. And boy, it was heavy. It's heavy stuff. So the next dream, the third and final dream, this one, it took a very long time for me to get a full understanding. At first, I took a very, I'm not going to say a carnal understanding, but I feel like it was very face value. I have 3 ex-girlfriends, and each ex ran to my family's porch, to my parents' porch, and I was standing on the top of the porch. I was standing on the top step, and they were running, and they came to me, all 3 of them, and they were saying, my name is Nick, y'all, but they were saying, Nick, please help us, please, oh my gosh. And I was like, what are y'all talking about? Like, what y'all got going on? And they was like, we didn't listen. We knew what you were saying, but we didn't understand what you were saying. We didn't listen. And I was like, didn't listen to what? You told us. You said it would happen, and it happened. I said, what happened? They said the thing that you said God will do, it happened. They were all saying it differently. They was like, the thing that you said God would do, it happened, Nick, it happened. And they were crying, they were breaking down, and they was like, please help us, please. And I said, I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what you're talking about. And they were each offering themselves to me, and in different ways, though, not all the same. My third ex, whom me and her, we actually broke up in 2023. She kind of stood silent when it was time to, when they took the time to ask me to bring them in. And she kind of stood silent and kind of looked like she was ashamed of having not believed what I was saying, I guess. And kind of prideful, like she didn't want to admit that she was wrong. But she did say, will you please help me, because I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I'll tell you the truth now. I'll tell you everything that I did to you. And I was like, what? The second one, whom I actually went to jail behind, she told something and it wasn't true, and I went to jail and ended up having to fight a case for 2 years and do probation for 3 years. And I just recently finished that probation. I was just told yesterday. As a matter of fact, before the understanding of these dreams came, I was just told yesterday I was free. And I'm actually off a little early. But the first one, she said, well, the second one, I'm sorry, she said, you tried to tell me and I just didn't listen. I didn't listen. She was very much into witchcraft. I didn't know it at first when meeting her, but she was very much into witchcraft. And she said, you tried to tell me about God and I did not listen. Nick, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. Can I come in, please? Can I come in? And I said, no. The first one, me and her, we started dating in high school. We had a very hard ending. It was very rough. It was a lot of deception, a lot of fighting, a lot of lies. Not necessarily fighting between us, but it caused fighting between me and other individuals. And a lot of people ended up very much confused and a lot of sinning going on. So she said, she was crying. She said, Nick, you were the only person that talked to me about this stuff. You're the only one that taught me. And you knew this was coming. You have to help me. Please help me. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. I'm looking, these are 3 ex-girlfriends. So I'm like, I don't know about what y'all talking about. But it was sad, actually, to see all 3 of them in fear. It was a deep fear for them. Whatever happened, it was terrible. They kept looking back and pointing back. If you know, well, you probably don't know, but if you're seeing this, but the way my parents' house is set up, the porch is actually pointed towards the highway that leads into a town called Rose Hill. And they kept pointing back in that direction, towards where the town sign is and stuff. They were saying, they kept pointing there and being frantic when they would talk about what was going on. And I remember something came to me. Don't look at them. Don't let them in. But I was like, I remember when me and my third ex, when we broke up, I was so heartbroken. I was so devastated. And I was so mad and I was so upset. These things that happened to me in that time period in the end of that year actually led to me being baptized. So hallelujah. But at the time period of me having these dreams, I just didn't understand, because I remember the Lord saying, one day you and her will talk again and she will admit everything that she has done wrong to you. But when you do hear it, first she will tell a lie, and do not believe what she says when she first speaks. Then she will tell you the truth, and show grace, show mercy, because anything I say to her in that moment can destroy her. And it was a command for me to show grace and show mercy. It was not show grace and mercy. It was, no, show grace and show mercy, because anything you say can destroy her. And I believe honestly that the Lord was telling me, don't be accountable for her demise, but still act in his function. And in God's function, he shows a lot of grace, he shows a lot of mercy. And you have to know that as man, we cannot sin. We cannot sin against each other and think, the Lord's grace is going to still just, be on us. So he shows grace even to those that have violated you. He shows grace to those that you have violated, so he does this. The thing that happened next was, when I had this dream of her, he told me, don't let her in, because when she comes to destroy you. And that I've held on to. I've always remembered that, like, because the Lord told me I would be on a different level. I'll be in a different place in life. I will not be on the same level as her. We will not be sharing levels. And this could mean spiritually, this could mean financially, this could mean anything, but it definitely means something about me is more elevated than her. And she comes back and she discusses what she did and what happened. And I'm told not to even let her in. I had other dreams about her being around. She was holding a baby months before she actually had an actual baby. I saw the name of the guy she ended up having a baby with in the phone that she was holding on to in the dream. I remember grabbing the baby. The baby didn't even feel real. The baby looked like me, but the baby didn't feel real. I actually took notes on this the night that I actually had this dream. But when she left the house, it was my great-grandmother's house, the house that I was raised in. She left and the door slammed behind her. And my father came around the corner wearing a white shirt and blue jeans, and he told me, don't let her back in. And, at the time I was still very much heartbroken, but I was very much still like hoping she would come back. That was one of the things I told her when she left, like, if you want to come back, you can up until this point, but if you don't, all right, I'll take that as the message. And of course she didn't. So she ended up having a child with a guy, and the name just so happened to match the one I saw in the dream. She never told me who this guy's name was. I ended up actually getting it from the dream. And then a friend of mine actually told me that's the name of the guy. So crazy enough, right? That was the confirmation for me. I even saw the guy in dreams too. So, that's crazy enough. But that was the understanding that I got yesterday. Now, let me finish. Let me tie it up. Because I've been talking for a while. But the dream that with the 3 X's, there was an understanding that took place over a period of time. But this artist named XXXTentacion, I remember this came to mind yesterday. I remember that his real name, the understanding of his real name actually came up, and the XXX actually stood for 666 Tentacion. Tentacion being temptation. So his name was 666 Tentacion, or 666 Temptation. And the 3 X's in the dream, it came to mind right then that these X's equal 6. The numerical value of the X is 6. 666 came to my doorstep. It came to my family's doorstep. pleading to come in, pleading for help. And I was like, what's going on? What these women were worried about dealt with 666. It dealt with the man of sin. It dealt with something of demonic behavior that happened that was so great that those who were deceived and had heard the name of the Lord and had heard the words of the Lord and had heard the prophecies of the Lord understood, and they were in fear because they were not prepared, because they didn't believe. They didn't believe in what was being said. So they ran to those. And I remember asking the Lord, why would these women come to me? They don't even want to be with me. And I remember hearing the Spirit of the Lord tell me that these women have not been with a man that told them anything about the Lord since you. So they came to you because you were the last one that knew what was going on. And it blew my mind. But of course, at the time I was thinking, if it's the Holy Spirit, it will prove itself. But I don't know if they would do that in real life. You know, I was thinking they probably wouldn't do that. But that's what the symbolism was. That was what was going on, and it was so crazy, guys. It was so crazy. Whoever sees this video, just know that I was instructed to make this video. I was gonna just call people individually, but I'm told that I need to make this video because I won't be able to actually talk with everybody. I won't be able to have the chance to actually sit with everybody. So for those of you that listen, here you go. All praise be unto the Most High. All praise, be unto, though all praise be unto the Most High. All praise be unto Yahuwah. All praise be unto Yahweh, Yeshua. All praise, because this is a message to those. When I first had that very first dream, I thought to myself, we're getting ready to go into World War III. Gen Z men are the ones that's going to be drafted into this. The millennial men are the ones that they're going to be too old to even be drafted. So when the women are left behind, I was thinking, like, when the women are left behind, the only ones that they'll be able to go to and procreate with and even be protected by are the millennial men that were left. And now I'm understanding that those men in the first dream were uncovered. They didn't understand the word. They didn't understand the spiritual warfare going on. So when they ran out, they were immediately killed. They were immediately shot down. It was gruesome. It was horrible. It is horrible. It is slaughter if you go out into this spiritual warfare with no discernment, no understanding, no God, no covering, none of this. And that's what was happening in the dream. They didn't know how to fight in the spiritual warfare. They were broken. They did not understand. They had no rank. They had no formation. They had no badges, no nothing on them. They were just running around in old BDUs, old army fatigues, old stuff. The old tricks that were used were actually tricking them into running into the open battlefield. Charging is such an old-fashioned style of warfare. It has no place in the field of battle today. But they were trying it, and it was killing them. Thank you for making it this far. To whoever this blesses, all praise be unto the Most High. Many people know me as Brass. I did say my real name up here, but many people know me as Brass. Be real and stay surreal. And I'm just doing my mission at this point. God bless.